We are well underway into NHL free agency for the 2019 NHL offseason here. We've seen many contracts signed. Some contracts look very valuable, and certainly others look very questionable. In today's video, I'm going to go over with you the top 5 contracts I think that are the most risky that some of these teams are going to regret in a very short time. And that's coming up next. Welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. Now, every year during the NHL free agent period, we see GMs making mistakes, especially on July the 1st. Almost every year, there's a guarantee there's bound to be at least a few toxic contracts signed. Even though at the time of contract signing, they look to be pretty solid deals, but they don't always work out to be that way. Some contracts you can say do look toxic almost from the get-go. Look back to 2016, for example. There was a lot of bad deals signed that year. That was probably one of the years we've seen GMs make the most mistakes, and I do think there's a few deals in the 2019 crop here that, in my opinion, already look questionable. So let's jump in with the top 5 deals that I think are the most risky moving forward here. At number 5, I've got Cam Talbot signing a 1-year contract with the Calgary Flames at $2.75 million. Personally, I think that's a lot of money for a backup goaltender who's had a couple of really subpar years playing in Edmonton. Of course, he was a backup at the Rangers for a period of time. Really did very, very well. Of course, that Rangers team at the time really was pretty solid in front of them as well. They had a lot of playoff runs, and Cam Talbot was looking like one of the better backup goalies in the league, was ready to get a starting position. Ended up going to Edmonton, and in the beginning it didn't look too bad, but really after that, the last couple of years things have been kind of off the rails here. His play has been subpar, and he ended up getting traded to the Flyers at the deadline, and they decided not to keep him as well, even though many believe that he was being brought in to be like a mentor to Carter Hart. They have a very good friendship off the ice, do a lot of training together, and many believe that he would end up staying, but they decided to go with a very often injured Brian Elliott instead of going with Talbot, which is really says something here. In my opinion, they clearly were not very impressed in his very limited amount of time and action with the organization. So now he goes on to Calgary and basically replaces the aging Mike Smith. Obviously, Smith has had a couple of subpar years in Calgary as well, but really he certainly had his moments where he looked pretty good too. But overall, I just don't see this as an upgrade at all. If anything, it's a lateral move, possibly even a setback. The Calgary Flames had an absolutely terrific NHL regular season last year. I mean, the top seed in the Western Conference, won their division, but absolutely bombed in the first round of the playoffs. They're one of the bigger playoff disappointments. Obviously, they probably feel that they can compete and come back again strong during the 1920 season. Hopefully make the playoffs in a high position again, and this time hopefully go on a deeper run than the first round. But I'm really not sure Cam Talbot is going to be any assistance in helping them get there. It's fairly safe to assume that David Rittich will become the full-time starter, which I do support and I think he's ready for. So hopefully Rittich can really get the job done here. They can limit Talbot's action and really minimize the damage here. The only reason I have this contract at number 5 and not higher up only because it's a 1-year deal. So obviously it's a very limited amount of time he can spend there. So it's low risk in that sense, but I just think the Calgary Flames really could have done a whole lot better. But maybe they should have explored the trade market or gone a different direction. I really just don't see this being a great signing. I would have preferred them to see them go after a guy like a Curtis McElhinney, for example, who's been one of the NHL's best backups in recent years. Probably could have come in even cheaper and probably played more games and had a lot more confidence with them. But either way, I'm not a fan of the signing here with Talbot and the Flames. They do have some other things they need to address this offseason as well, but I can see this early in the year being something that they learn to regret even before Christmas. At number 4, I've got Richard Panik here, the Washington Capitals, who signed a 4-year contract at $2.75 million. Now, the money here isn't the problem, it's the term, 4 years. He's had one 20-goal season in his career, which came when he was playing with Chicago, and at that point in time, he was having an opportunity to play fairly high up in their lineup and was playing with a lot of other skilled and talented players. Otherwise, you've seen him play for teams like Tampa. You've seen him play briefly for Toronto. He's been in Arizona, and he just hasn't produced really all that consistently. He's a 20 to 30 point player, generally speaking, and to get a 4-year deal, to me, is very risky. If this was a 1 or 2 year contract, I wouldn't be having it on this list. I wouldn't be saying that it's a bad signing, but they had an opportunity. Rather than sign Richard Panik, they could have kept Brett Connolly. If you look at the contract he ended up receiving from the Florida Panthers, it really wasn't a whole lot more than this. We're talking like probably bridging the gap here by $400,000 or $500,000. Really really, the Florida Panthers snagged Connolly from the Capitals, and the Capitals really should have spent the extra to keep Brett Connolly. He's been a terrific fit there. He's really developed into a really nice player for them. I realize he's probably looking for more ice time, more opportunity, but he's not really going to get that in Florida either. I mean, look at the Florida Panthers forward group. They're pretty well stacked as well. He's not going to get more opportunity in Florida, so he's still going to play the same type of role with the Panthers that he did with the Capitals. He's just going to make more money doing it. So I'm kind of disappointed in Washington here. I really feel they should have paid the extra to keep him, even if it meant making some other sacrifices to their roster. I just thought he was a better, more reliable player than what Richard Panik could turn out to be here. I mean, he's just hasn't been consistent, and I'm just not a fan of the signing. I really think the Capitals could have done better. Now, many might disagree with me on this one, but I'm putting at number 3, Sergei Bobrovsky of the Florida Panthers, signing that 7-year, $10 million contract. That is a lot of money for a goaltender, and I realize he's got a pretty good resume, but giving him 7 years and that much money is really kind of risky in my opinion. If you take a look at the Montreal Canadiens and Carey Price, when he first signed that contract, I know there was many Habs fans happy that he was locked up longer term, but that contract has been critiqued time and time again, and really has caused a lot of other GMs up until now to really shy away from having their goaltenders paid so heavily. Obviously, Carey Price, even though he was better last year, really had a couple of down years and really struggled ever since we saw a few years back when he won all those NHL awards. He really had some major downtime in between, missed a lot of time, wasn't playing well. The team in front of him wasn't playing well, and that really wasn't looking all that great. Now, based on last year's play, I think there's certainly more fair to say that at least a big chunk of the year that the old Carey Price appeared to be back. But still, Sergei Bobrovsky is a player who's been pretty solid in the regular season, but he still hasn't proven a whole heck of a lot in the playoffs. This past year with Columbus was the only time really in the playoffs they looked pretty decent. I don't think you can fault the fact that they lost in the second round on Bobrovsky, and I don't really think that's his fault at all. Could he have been better, maybe stolen some more games? Of course, you can always say the goaltender is crucial in the playoffs, but I don't really think it's fair to point the finger at him here either. By giving a goaltender that much money over that length of time for somebody who is really has had some solid regular seasons but not a proven playoff record is pretty risky here in my opinion. Now, the Panthers have desperately needed help in goal for some time. Roberto Luongo has been aging and not up to his old standards. They've had trouble with the backup position. James Reimer hasn't been the greatest since he's been with the Panthers organization as well. So that team's desperately needed an upgrade in goal, so I can understand them wanting to address that, and I understand the fact that they had to pay heavily to obtain the free agent market. They were in a bit of a competitive situation. Considering the income tax rules in Florida and the fact that usually you see teams, especially like Tampa, not having to overpay for players because of the lower taxes, and that they have that advantage, that you should be able to get a goalie or any of their top players in the same situation here at the Panthers organization. If you think about what that $10 million per year would be equivalent to in many of the other U.S. and Canadian markets for Bobrovsky to play elsewhere, he's getting paid quite handsomely. He's actually making a substantial amount more than Carey Price, technically, based on the equivalent here of the take-home pay with the difference in taxes. So really, I really like Sergei Bobrovsky. Don't get me wrong, he's a terrific goaltender. I don't blame the Florida Panthers for wanting to sign him at all. I'm just not fond of the mega contract that they gave him. It's going to come with a lot of expectations, and I just don't know that he's going to be able to live up to it to get them over the hump here and really help them win a Stanley Cup. Obviously, they have a lot of other great young players in that team. He might turn out to be the missing piece here. Maybe I'll be wrong. I just see that contract having a lot of risk to it down the road, especially. For the first little while, it's going to probably look okay here. I just see the strong possibility that this team could continue to be mediocre and possibly not make the playoffs on a consistent basis, could still struggle to draw attendance, and very well might regret dishing out this much money on a goaltender down the road. Next up at number 2, we've got Tyler Myers, who just signed a contract with the Vancouver Canucks for 5 years at $6 million per year. Total contract here worth $30 million. I just don't see this being the type of contract that's going to age very well. I already have concerns about Tyler Myers right now at the stage of his career he's in currently. I see him as probably being a number 4 to 5 defenseman on most NHL teams, and I just don't think a defenseman can be paid $6 million for that type of role. I just think it's way too much money, and I just don't see this contract aging well here over time. Obviously, he's a huge guy. I can see his skating's really starting to deteriorate compared to when he first came into the league, and I can see that continuing to happen here. Based on all the youngsters that the Canucks have in their prospect pool and the ones that are expected to play in the lineup this year, I see him getting passed on the depth chart here year after year and slowly working his way down to be probably a bottom pair defenseman before this contract is expired. As the Canucks have a lot of other younger players looking for big raises, this contract could hinder them to be able to fulfill a lot of those needs. For example, they've got to sign Brock Besser this summer. So far, negotiations have not gone to best. They're not anywhere near an agreement as of the recording of this video. Of course, they got Elias Pettersson still in his entry-level deal, but he's going to need a new contract during the term of this deal as well. You get Quinn Hughes early on in his contract again, but still, during the 5 years that Myers has signed for, all these guys are going to need substantial raises. But having a contract like this on the books when you've already got one like Louis Eriksson, it's just going to prove to be very problematic and really hinder their ability to look after their younger players over time. This very well could be Louis Eriksson 2.0. Hopefully the Canucks can move the Eriksson contract off their books soon enough so they don't have that dragging them down here as well. But over time, I just don't see this age well, and it's really going to tie up a lot of cap space that could go towards a lot of their top younger players that are going to need raises in a few years' time. And the number one most problematic, most risky contract that I've seen signed so far in the free agency this year is the New York Islanders giving goaltender Semyon Varlamov a 4-year contract at $5 million. Why did they not sign Robin Lehner to the same contract? I have no idea. That would have been a way better deal. Obviously, Lehner ended up going to Chicago on a 1-year contract at $5 million, which is incredibly surprising. Lehner did not want to leave the Islanders. This is a bit of a steal here for Chicago. They already have Corey Crawford and Colin Delia under contract, but considering the health of Crawford and how he's been hurt so much, this is really going to prove to be an excellent case of them stealing a goaltender from another franchise. He's also young enough that he could potentially take over the starting role and be their main goalie for a number of years yet. He's only 27 years old. He's got lots of NHL hockey left in him. He's playing the best that he has so far in his career. He's clean and sober, got his mental health in order, and really proved last year that he's one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. So why the Islanders would let him go, I have no idea. Now, obviously, there was a connection here that Semyon Varlamov is obviously friends and close to Elias Sorokin, who's a top Russian prospect goaltender for the New York Islanders, who they're hoping will come over from the KHL and be a part of the Islanders organization here. Hopefully next year, if not really soon, is a player they've been trying to get to come to North America for some time, but he keeps renewing his contracts in the KHL and is yet to come over. So I do see a strategy here that they see Sorokin as the goalie of the future if they can get him to commit and sign a contract and come over to North America, and they're hoping that Varlamov can help facilitate that through the connection. Obviously, it would be wise to have some players from the same country around, help ease that transition, can help with any language barriers, ease them into life in North America, getting used to living in a different city and all that. I get that. That's probably beneficial. But at the same time, you need to be worried about today in winning hockey games, getting back to the playoffs, trying to duplicate what you just did in the playoffs and going on a deeper run. And Robin Lehner was the guy to do that, in my opinion. So even though they signed Captain Anders Lee, I still see the Islanders as not having a great day in free agency here. I just don't see Varlamov playing nearly as well as Lehner, and committing to him for 4 years after some subpar seasons here just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, he very well might bounce back and prove that this is going to be a decent contract if the Islanders play in front of him as a team like they did defensively last year. That's certainly going to make his job easier and very well might give him some decent stats here. But I just don't see why they would move away from a Vezina-nominated goaltender like Robin Lehner and give him a 4-year, $5 million deal. So those are the top 5 risky contracts for me so far in free agency. Of course, as always, want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, what you think of my selections, and who would you pick to be some of the riskier contracts handed out here during the 2019 NHL free agent frenzy. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, cover all the breaking news here when it comes to free agency, trades, and a whole lot more. All kinds of content coming throughout the entire offseason. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.